Hello everyone and welcome once again to ThursDev. I'm your host Luke, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about a sort of best practice in game development, and honestly really any collaborative project, that frequently falls by the wayside in the confusion and chaos of game development that deserves to be restated from time to time lest we forget to do so. Take ownership of your work. This will probably sound like a no-brainer to everyone, so I apologize that I'm devoting an entire episode to something that seems like common sense and is fairly mundane, but there's a complex component to this practice that is sort of born of the concept of a production pipeline and how for each feature there are a number of people that are involved. Unfortunately, because of a lack of proper observance of this very basic principle, however, the further down the chain you get, often the more garbage accumulates, and eventually, when things break, it often falls on the heads of the QA team, who are at the bottom of the ladder, and are tasked with verifying a mess while not being given all the necessary tools to know that it's not even implemented correctly. As you'll be aware, as per the video we did recently about the production pipeline, most features travel down through many, if not all, disciplines on the way to implementation. Starting in the hands of the designer, it gets passed down through various disciplines in design before art assets and code work are done, and then onward down to QA. This means that for everything that's designed in a game, it's touched, and in some cases altered, by multiple different people before it's completed. With the proper amount of due diligence in the design process, changes can be smaller or greater depending on the granularity, specificity, and completeness of the design, but even the most well thought out design can still be subject to a feature implementation getting caught in the game of telephone that happens when it goes through a number of different people. Due to the inherent hecticness of game development, it's common for an individual developer to complete their part of a feature and then pass it off to the next person down the chain, then completely shift their focus to the next item on their usually ever-increasing list of things to do. If everyone was always 100% on the same page about everything, then this would be a painless system, but over 5 studios and nearing 20 shipped games in my career, I've seen failures occur along this pipe many times. As a designer, perhaps even more critically than all others, though it eats into your individual work time on further design work, it's your responsibility to follow your work down the pipe as it's developed and ultimately implemented, and it's your responsibility to test your work to ensure that it's performing as you designed. As the one that designed the feature, you're the person with the greatest and most complete understanding of what it's meant to do. If you're the programmer, you're the one with the greatest and most complete understanding of how the implementation was done, and onward. You are the best person to answer questions about the work that you did, and when you receive work to do, you're also the best person to know what questions need to be asked to do what you need to do. In an ideal world, teams would be communicating at all times, and everyone would have full visibility on the features that they're involved with and its progress through the pipeline, but human nature, especially when we're busy, is to hunker down and focus on working, even to the detriment of communication. I've had the distinct pleasure of working in the past with many programmers that are very vocal about questions and concerns when one of my designs was imperfect, they found a logical flaw, or just plain didn't understand my thoughts. I'm fallible, and that sort of thing will happen, and so are you. Everyone should be expecting this fallibility. Unfortunately though, not everyone you work with on a team is always going to be fully analyzing everything that you give to them. This leads to, in the worst case scenario, a dispassionate implementation of the design with all of its imperfections, exactly as you wrote it and no better or no worse, and delivery of that to the next person down the line who may not even realize that it's broken. Once something is contaminated in this way, it retains that contamination all the way down into delivery, and can become a tangled mess that's difficult to unravel. An unfortunate assumption made once something has been passed to the next person, as wrong as it always turns out to be, is that the work that's being passed down is done and that it's completely right. You can't afford to assume that everyone that works on something has created perfection before it reaches your hands, and you can't afford to assume that people down the line are going to be able to perfectly interpret your vision. So communicate, follow up, and own your work as it moves down the chain. Nothing that you create should be set and forget, ever. Unlike many other types of software development, games are inherently inexact pieces of software. You can accomplish a goal in 1,000 different ways, and own your work once it's given to you, and communicate with the people before you on that chain if there's something that's unsure, and communicate with the people beyond you in the chain to make sure that what you've done is understandable and useful to them. This is one of those instances where it should be abundantly clear that ego has no place in a game development studio. Yes, your design should be respected, as should a programmer's code or an artist's artwork, and each should take pride in what they do, but each and every one of these should be called out if something is wrong with it. Taking offense because someone didn't agree with your design or your art or the way you wrote your code is going to do nothing but make your product worse. I've worked under way too many studio despots to think that inflexibility is even remotely constructive. Should game development be a democracy? No. Design by committee also taints work, and not everyone can do what you do, but nothing is above scrutiny, and when you're wrong, you should be glad that someone in your studio caught it instead of a player sometime down the line. And if you notice something wrong with the work that you receive, talk to the person who did the work and raise a question or two to them. If they're adult enough to accept criticism, it'll be better for everyone involved. Ultimately, I know this is really Teamwork 101, but I find that there's a lot of people that have moved into the professional workforce who forget this simple concept and sometimes need to be reminded of it. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode of ThursDev. We're a tiny group with a tiny following, but I hope that you enjoy the content that we make, and that it might be useful to you from time to time, whether you're a green-as-can-be rookie or a seasoned game dev veteran. If you'd like to join this little collective of game creators and consumers, please consider subscribing to our channel and checking out the other content that we have to offer. If you only care about ThursDev, there's also a ThursDev playlist that you can follow to receive specifically only our ThursDev videos. Regardless of what you prefer though, I hope that I'll see you around here next time. Until then, have a good one and take care.